There's a single figure that cuts through every piece of promotional language surrounding the 2026 World Cup and reveals the architecture beneath it. $11 billion. That is the revenue FIFA projects it will collect from this tournament. $11 billion flowing to a nonprofit organization registered in Switzerland, generated from the stadiums, the infrastructure, the security deployments, and the public services of 11 American cities that will see none of that money returned to them directly. Alan Rothenberg said it without diplomatic softening. Everybody signed an agreement that was very, very one-sided. Rothenberg ran United States Soccer when America last hosted the World Cup in 1994. He has seen what a hosting arrangement looks like when the terms work for both parties. His assessment of 2026 is not that it's imperfect or imbalanced in minor ways. Very, very one-sided. That framing matters because it comes from someone with no incentive to overstate it and every professional reason to understand precisely what he's describing. What does very, very one-sided actually mean at the level of dollars and obligations? This is what the structure looks like. FIFA collects all revenue from every match, every ticket, every broadcast payment attributable to those fixtures. The host cities collect nothing from the matches directly. What the cities do collect is the obligation to fund the security operations surrounding each match, to retrofit their stadiums to meet football-specific requirements, and to build and operate the fan infrastructure, the public viewing zones, the transport management, the civic organization. That turns a sporting event into a functional citywide experience. FIFA takes the revenue. The cities absorb the costs. That is a contractual architecture of the 2026 World Cup, and it governs 11 American cities simultaneously. It was not always this arrangement. Rothenberg has described what 1994 looked like by comparison. Host cities in that cycle received a portion of game day commercial revenues. The food, the beverages, the in-stadium spending that a crowd of tens of thousands generates on a match day. United States Soccer also covered the security expenses that cities would otherwise carry. That meant the financial equation for a hosting city was coherent. Spend money on preparation, recover money from the event, potentially come out ahead. The deal had logic on both sides of it. The 2026 deal does not have the same logic, and at least one major American city ran the numbers and reached that conclusion before signing anything. Chicago looked at the hosting agreement, assessed what would cost against what it would receive, and withdrew from the process. Chicago, a city with a population base, the sporting culture, the stadium infrastructure, and the civic capacity to host a World Cup without difficulty, determined that the financial terms made hosting a net negative for the people whose taxes would fund it. So Chicago left. The cities that remained, Dallas, Houston, Los Angeles, New York, Seattle, San Francisco, Kansas City, Boston, Philadelphia, Miami, and Atlanta, stayed for reasons that are not irrational. International exposure at scale, tourism and hotel occupancy, the long-term commercial associations that come from hosting something watched by billions. Those benefits are real, even when they resist precise quantification. But the costs resist no such quantification. They are concrete, contracted, and already accumulating. The federal government awarded $625 million in security grants to the 11 host cities through FEMA. That figure, sourced from International Business Times, represents a meaningful contribution. It is also, according to economists who study major sporting event economics, probably not sufficient. Andrew Zimbalist, who has spent a career analyzing the finances of events at this scale, has been direct about what cities are likely to face. Significant security expenses, essentially zero direct revenue from the tournament, and in many cases, net losses. Local sponsorships and private contributions will offset some of that gap. The remainder lands on taxpayers, residents who were not party to the hosting negotiations, who did not review the terms, and who'll be managing the budget consequences long after the final match is played in July. The Texas situation is a useful reference point because it comes with prior evidence. In 2017, Texas committed $22 million to host the Super Bowl between the New England Patriots and the Atlanta Falcons. The state expected a return on that commitment. A post-event analysis found it impossible to determine whether Texas broke even, and the evidence pointed toward a shortfall of approximately $14 million. That was a single American football game played over one afternoon. Texas is now hosting World Cup matches in both Dallas and Houston across a month-long tournament at a financial scale that renders the Super Bowl comparison a baseline rather than a ceiling. The evolution of FIFA's hosting model between 1994 and 2026 is not incidental. It is the product of deliberate institutional decisions made as the organization's revenue capacity expanded. The 1994 tournament generated hundreds of millions in revenue. The 2026 tournament is projected to generate $11 billion. As that revenue multiplied, the proportion of its share with host cities moved in the opposite direction. In 1994, cities received a portion of match day revenue and had security costs underwritten. In 2026, 100% of ticket sales goes to FIFA, not 90, not 80, 100, as reported by ABC News. And cities fund their own security through a combination of federal grants, local budgets, and whatever commercial arrangements they can negotiate independently. The growth in FIFA's earnings and the decline in the city's share are not coincidental developments. They reflect a negotiating dynamic in which one party held the asset, the World Cup itself, and over 3 decades extracted progressively more favorable terms from the parties competing to host it. The transport pricing episode that emerged in the weeks before the tournament illustrated how the financial pressure cascades downward through the system. New Jersey Transit announced that round-trip fares from Penn Station to MetLife Stadium on match days would be priced at $150, more than 11 times the standard fare of $12.90, as reported by ABC News. That pricing decision did not emerge from nowhere. It emerged from a situation in which the entity responsible for moving fans to a stadium was absorbing event-related operational costs without receiving any direct contribution from the revenue the event was generating. The cost had to be recovered somewhere. It was recovered from the fans who had already paid FIFA's ticket prices to attend. The subsequent public backlash produced a fare reduction, but the underlying logic that generated the original price remained structurally unchanged. Vancouver offers a useful perspective from outside the American hosting context. The cost of staging World Cup matches there is estimated at between $532 and $624 million Canadian dollars, with projected revenue recoveries of $448 to $478 million, according to Riviera Radio. That leaves a gap of between roughly $50 and $176 million, depending on how the attendance economics develop. Vancouver's situation may be somewhat more favorable than what American cities face, because Canadian federal and provincial governments engage more directly in underwriting arrangements and negotiating terms. But even there, with more favorable structural conditions, the hosting city is projecting a potential 9-figure deficit. FIFA's legal status is worth pausing on because it carries a particular tension in this context. FIFA is registered as a nonprofit organization. That classification exists in the legal frameworks of the countries in which it operates. It projects $11 billion in revenue from a single tournament, retains 100% of ticket sales, and leaves the municipalities generating that revenue to absorb costs that run into the hundreds of millions. The nonprofit designation does not mean FIFA operates without financial surpluses. It means those surpluses are structured and deployed within a particular legal framework. Whether that framework adequately describes the actual financial relationships between FIFA and the cities and citizens whose resources make the tournament possible is a question the $11 billion revenue figure makes difficult to dismiss. Rothenberg's observation lands with particular weight because of where it comes from. He was present in 1994 when the arrangement was different, when the revenues were shared, when security costs were covered, when hosting a World Cup was structured as a genuine partnership rather than a transaction in which one party captures a commercial value and the other carries the operational cost. Something changed between then and now. The tournament grew, the revenues grew, the city's share went to zero, and the stadiums those cities spent hundreds of millions preparing, the security their local and federal taxes funded, the transport networks repriced to cover shortfalls, all of it contributed to a number, $11 billion, that will be received in Zurich. The football inside those stadiums will be worth watching. It almost invariably is at this scale. The matches will produce the moments that tournaments at this level reliably produce. performances, results, and individual passages of play that enter the permanent record of the sport. The pitches will be immaculate. The facilities will meet every standard. The cities will have delivered what they contracted to deliver. But here's a question that the financial structure of 2026 makes worth sitting with as you watch those matches. If the stadium you're watching from was funded and retrofitted by the city around it, if the security keeping the event safe was paid for by the federal and local taxes of people who live there, if the transport getting fans to the gate was repriced to cover a cost that the tournament's own revenue didn't absorb, and if 100% of the ticket money from what you're watching goes to an organization in Switzerland, does knowing that change how you see what you're watching? And if FIFA redirected even a fraction of it, $11 billion back to the cities that make the tournament possible, would that be a meaningful reform? Or would it require something more fundamental than a fractional adjustment to a structure that was designed from the beginning to work one way?